The rain lashed against the monolithic windows of the United States Federal Courthouse in Palo Alto. It was the kind of cold, driving rain that seemed to wash away the easy optimism of Silicon Valley, replacing it with a grim, echoing sobriety. Inside courtroom 4B, the atmosphere was a vacuum of nervous energy. The fluorescent lights hummed with a monotonous, sickly tone, illuminating dust motes dancing in the stale air. The room smelled of old leather, fear, and institutional paper. Nerves were frayed, but not for the man sitting at the defense table. Elon Musk, dressed in a sharp but utterly simple dark suit, no tie, a defiance of the formality that surrounded him, sat utterly still. His eyes, fixed on the ornate crest above the judge's chair, held an unreadable depth. He was not fidgeting, not whispering to his counsel. He was simply waiting for the inevitable attack. The case was ostensibly about a minor regulatory breach involving the rapid deployment of a new satellite constellation, a technicality weaponized by rival corporate interests and leveraged by legacy critics who feared the speed of his innovation. But everyone in that room knew the truth. This was a performance. This was the old guard, the bureaucratic machine, attempting to assert dominance over the future. They wanted to slow him down, humiliate him, and prove that regardless of how high he built his rockets, the rules of the earthly system still applied. Presiding over this attempted public execution was Judge Alistair Harrington. Harrington was the personification of the entrenched system. His movements were slow, deliberate, heavy with self-importance. His robe, black and imposing, seemed to swallow the light. He tapped the microphone gingerly, the sound echoing through the otherwise silent courtroom, a preemptive assertion of control. "We have reached the conclusion of this highly complex matter," Judge Harrington began, his voice dry and resonant, carrying the weight of decades spent interpreting statutes. He adjusted his glasses, peering down at the defense table with an expression that bordered on contempt. He spent the next 5 minutes delivering a verbose, technical ruling filled with footnotes and legal jargon, but the message was clear. Arrogance had consequences. Innovation, without proper bureaucratic obeisance, was a threat. "Mr. Musk," the judge intoned, finally meeting the protagonist's gaze, "this court finds your organization, your processes, and frankly, your personal disregard for established regulatory timelines, deeply concerning. This is not a Wild West show, sir. This is the federal judiciary." The judge paused, allowing the gravity of his words to settle. The court reporter's fingers clicked softly on the stenograph machine, the only sound apart from the distant whine of the external rain. "Considering the potential destabilization your reckless speed could inflict upon established markets, and given your organization's flagrant dismissal of repeated filings, this court deems a punitive measure necessary." The tension in the gallery, packed with journalists, industry rivals, and a few silent observers from Wall Street, was suffocating. They were leaning forward, waiting for the number. Harrington leaned slightly back in his large leather chair, a faint, predatory satisfaction playing at the corner of his mouth. He looked at Musk, expecting perhaps a flinch, a muttered curse, an immediate sign of financial distress. "The court hereby imposes a fine," Judge Harrington announced, the gavel hovering momentarily above the wood, "of $50 million, payable within 48 hours to the Treasury Department. Failure to comply will result in immediate operational restructuring oversight. $50 million. The air rushed out of the room. It was an astronomical fine for the alleged breach, clearly designed to send a tremor through the entire tech ecosystem. A few audible gasps escaped the gallery. Reporters immediately began typing furiously on their phones under the table, but the protagonist remained motionless. Elon Musk did not flinch. He did not look angry. He did not even look surprised. He simply kept his steady, unnervingly calm gaze fixed on the judge. His lead counsel shifted nervously, already preparing to stand and argue for mitigation or appeal. But Musk raised one hand, a small, almost imperceptible gesture, instructing his lawyer to remain seated. The silence that followed the judge's pronouncement was deafening. It was the crucial, terrifying silence of an aircraft gliding after engine failure. Everyone waited for the explosion, the tirade, the defensive roar of the billionaire cornered. It did not come. Musk slowly rose to his feet. He was tall, but his posture was not aggressive. It was simply grounded. He placed both hands flat upon the defense table. He spoke, not raising his voice above a conversational tone, forcing Judge Harrington and everyone in the room to strain to hear him. This quiet authority was far more potent than any shout. "Your Honor," Musk began, his voice measured, devoid of emotional resonance. "I understand and respect the authority of this court to impose penalties, even excessive ones. I also understand that such penalties must be applied with due diligence, impartiality, and transparency, as mandated by the Judicial Code of Conduct, Rule 3.2, Section B. The judge, whose smug look had begun to fade slightly at the mention of the Code of Conduct, shifted uncomfortably. "Mr. Musk, you are not here to lecture the court on procedure. Do you intend to appeal or comply with the court's order?" "I intend to comply, Your Honor," Musk stated softly. "However, before I sign the transfer documents for the $50 million, I have a single highly pertinent question regarding the court's due diligence in this specific matter." He paused, letting the word diligence hang in the air like an accusation. "Does Your Honor recall the case of Federal Oversight Commission versus Meridian Industries, concluded exactly 9 months ago in this very court?" Judge Harrington frowned. "That is utterly irrelevant to the current proceedings." "With the greatest respect, Your Honor, it is critically relevant," Musk countered, his eyes sharp and unblinking. "In that case, Meridian Industries, a significant competitor to several of my own enterprises, faced a similar regulatory compliance issue. You dismissed the case, citing that the failure to disclose the operational timeline constituted a harmless technical oversight, setting a powerful precedent that my own legal team reviewed closely." Musk picked up a slim, bound document from the table, turning slowly to face the gallery, though his words were still directed solely at the judge. "But more relevant than the legal precedent, Your Honor, is the ethical precedent. During the Meridian ruling, you stressed the absolute importance of judicial transparency, stating, 'The appearance of impropriety is as damaging as the act itself. All parties must be certain that the judgment delivered is free from personal bias.'" Musk placed the document down. The silence was now absolute. Even the rain seemed to have paused its beating against the glass. "Your Honor," Musk continued, leaning slightly toward the microphone, his tone shifting from analytical review to cold, surgical accusation, "I have no doubt of your deep personal conviction that the future must be held back by the past. However, transparency is crucial. And I must ask, before issuing this severe punitive fine of $50 million, which will inevitably benefit our immediate market rivals, did you disclose your spouse's considerable, undisclosed financial position?" The court reporter stopped typing. The judge's face, previously florid with authority, went startlingly white. "Objection! Defense counsel is attempting to impugn the integrity of this court," Judge Harrington sputtered, the polished formality dissolving into raw, panicked anger. He slammed his hand on the desk, missing the gavel. "I am not making an objection, Your Honor," Musk corrected, still quiet, still calm. "I am submitting a factual discovery. My team's investigation, initiated purely due to the disparity between the Meridian ruling and the current $50 million fine, revealed a filing, Schedule 13G, filed last Tuesday. It shows that your spouse, Mrs. Elaine Harrington, currently holds equity stakes totaling 11% in 2 of the 3 primary competitors who filed the underlying complaints against my company, and who would be the primary financial beneficiaries of the imposed operational restrictions." He paused, letting the implication expand like a noxious gas. "That stake, Your Honor, is valued at approximately $7.8 million. Your failure to declare this significant conflict of interest, particularly given the magnitude of the fine and its immediate impact on market competition, constitutes a direct and flagrant violation of the specific ethical standard you yourself preached in the Meridian case, the very standard that mandates recusal." Musk did not shout. He did not accuse. He simply presented the facts, quietly, systematically, turning the judge's own past pronouncements into the shackles of his present downfall. The shock was palpable. The air felt brittle. Judge Harrington, the powerful man who moments ago commanded the entire room, was now visibly shaking. His grip on the armrests tightened, his knuckles white against the dark wood. He was trapped. Musk hadn't attacked him personally. He had weaponized the bureaucratic code Harrington claimed to uphold. "Mr. Musk, that information is inadmissible speculation," the judge stammered, his voice cracking slightly. "It is public record, Your Honor. The Schedule 13G filing is attached to this request." Musk responded, indicating a thick file now being handed to the judge's bewildered clerk. "I am not asking for the $50 million fine to be overturned. I am simply stating that under the Judicial Code of Conduct, Rule 3.2, Section B, and given the facts now entered into the public record of this court, you are ethically obligated to immediately recuse yourself, have the ruling vacated, and submit yourself to the Federal Judicial Conduct and Disability Committee for investigation into this severe conflict of interest." Musk took a deep, steadying breath, his victory complete, delivered without a hint of triumphalism. "I stand ready to pay the $50 million, Your Honor," he concluded, his gaze never wavering. "But I will not pay it to a court operating under compromised integrity." The room exploded, not with sound, but with movement. Reporters surged toward the doors, desperate to get the breaking news out. The defense counsel was stunned, rising now not to argue the fine, but to watch the judge collapse under the weight of his own hypocrisy. Judge Harrington looked around the room, at the silent court officers, the stunned gallery, the cold, unyielding eyes of the man who had just dismantled his career. He knew the fight was over. He had tried to use the system as a shield for personal gain, and the very structure he relied upon had been used as a scalpel to expose him. His face was slack with fear and defeat. His hand, reaching weakly for the gavel, was trembling uncontrollably. He couldn't issue a contempt order. That would only draw further scrutiny. He couldn't deny the filing. It was public record. He looked down at the $50 million ruling, the instrument of his arrogance, and it now felt like a lead weight. "This court," Harrington began, his voice barely a rasp. He swallowed hard. "This court is temporarily adjourned. All parties are instructed to return tomorrow." He stood abruptly, nearly knocking his chair over, and retreated through the private door behind the bench, leaving the courtroom in chaotic, buzzing disarray. The symbol of authority had fled, leaving his authority shattered on the floor of courtroom 4B. The story didn't wait until the next day. It took less than an hour for the transcripts, the crucial Schedule 13G filing, and the video clips of the judge's pale, trembling face to hit the global stage. The world reacted with instant, ferocious clarity. Headlines screamed across digital news feeds. "Judge exposed. $50 million fine Musk trap to uncover judicial corruption." On Twitter, the clip of Musk's quiet, devastating presentation went viral within minutes. It wasn't the spectacle of a man yelling, but the spectacle of a man using logic and truth to dismantle corruption. Users created the hashtag, #the silence wins. The public didn't just see a legal victory. They saw a visionary standing up against the petty, corrosive power of entrenched gatekeepers. The irony that the judge was undone by his own past rhetoric on transparency was delicious to a global audience tired of hypocrisy. The very system that Judge Harrington sought to protect, the slow, ponderous bureaucratic system, immediately turned against him. By late evening, the Judicial Conduct Committee announced an emergency review. The $50 million fine was immediately vacated. The case had dissolved, not through fiery argument, but through cold, hard, documented fact. The ultimate lesson of that sterile courtroom was not about satellites or finance. It was about character, integrity, and the enduring strength of measured truth. In a world addicted to noise, where the loudest voice often claims victory, Elon Musk reminded everyone that true power lies not in shouting, but in the meticulous preparation, the analytical mind, and the courage to confront falsehood with quiet, unassailable fact. He had proven that you can use the aggressor's own rulebook to ensure their permanent defeat. When facing the noise of critics, the fear of bureaucracy, or the weight of an unjust system, sometimes the most powerful response is not anger, but calculated, devastating silence. The only way to stop corruption is to force it to look at itself in the mirror of its own rules. The world needs more people like this. Share if you agree.